This video shows how to do CSV export and imports for alarms, incoming calls, persons and groups. If you are upgrading from an older MobiCall to a newer version, NewVoice recommends getting all CSV files from the old server, as there will be no problems in the database when importing. If there is any problem or typo in the CSV file, MobiCall will inform the user who is importing and in worst case not import this value or entry. On newer MobiCall versions, CSV exports are made with a backup tool by default. With older versions, the export must be done manually. To export or import CSV files, open up the NewVoice Alarm Central. Press the Settings, Alarm or Incoming Calls button in the upper left corner and select the Export and Import Functions option. A new window appears with all possibilities for export and import. Following data are possible: alarm data, entries for incoming calls, DDI, group data, personal data or personal data with group assignment. The separator for the CSV files can also be adjusted. By default, it is a semicolon, if for example, the data is exported from a third-party system which requires a special separator. First comes the alarm configuration. Start by selecting the location where the file should be saved or accessed. The default location is NVT. Press the button with the three dots next to it to change the location. Press the Edit button to open the current CSV file for adjustment. As no CSV file exists by default, it first must be exported. To do this, press the Export button next to the location for the alarm CSV file. A new window appears in which is defined how and which data should be exported. First, the location of the file must be changed, if not already done before. Then it must be defined whether all alarms or only a certain range should be exported. It is also possible to export only one alarm as a template for further alarms. If there are some settings in the alarm that should be changed, activate the checkbox Custom Specification of the fields which are exported and define the fields by pressing the button Select Fields. All settings for the alarms are now shown here. Depending on what is activated, these settings will be exported and only these settings can be re-imported to only change specific settings for the defined alarm. When ready, press the Export button at the bottom of the page to export the data to the specified directory. Once the export is made, press the Import button above to check how to re-import CSV files and to see if the export was successful. If you receive a message from MobiCall that no file is existing, check if the directory is correct and if there is a file. If not, try exporting again or contact NewVoice support. During the import, several options can be defined. First, select whether you want to import all alarms from the CSV file, which is active by default. Import only alarms from a specific range, which can be specified next to the alarms, or import only the selected alarms. This is done by pressing the Select Alarms button beside. Activate the checkboxes of the alarms you want to import. An offset can also be added to the imported alarms to import the same configuration with a different alarm number. The fields that are imported can also be specified. If the fields were already specified during export, only the possible fields are displayed. With the last checkboxes activated, MobiCall only imports alarms that are not yet available. If an alarm already exists, it will not be overwritten. Press the Import button to start your import and check in the log field above to see the import result. Next data that can be exported or imported is the data of the incoming phone call entries, also known as DDI. Here is defined how the MobiCall should be reachable by a phone call. If you want to import from an older installation, select the directory where the file is stored and press the Import button. If no CSV file exists, nothing can be imported. If it is the case, the file must first be created. Select a new directory or remain at d/NVT and press the Export button next to it. A new window appears in which the file export is defined. First, the directory is specified, which can be changed if it has not already been changed in the previous step. As with alarms, it can be defined whether all entries should be exported or only a certain range of entries, which is defined below. Custom fields of the entries can also be exported. To do this, activate the checkbox Custom Specification of the fields which are exported. The Select Fields button determines which fields are exported. Press the Export button below to start exporting the incoming call entries. The log field above shows whether the export is successful or failed. Press the back button when you are finished with this export. Since the file now exists, the Import button of the incoming phone entries can be pressed. After pressing, you will see the import settings, where first the directory of the file must be redefined, if it is not already defined. By pressing the Edit button, the file can be edited before importing. When finished editing, save the file and close it. Now select what you want to import. The first option is to import all incoming call entries from the CSV file. The other option is to import only entries from a specific range defined next to it. The third option is to import only incoming call entries which you select. The entry numbers can be selected by pressing the Select Entries button beside. Once the incoming calls to be imported are defined, several options can be changed. The first is to apply an offset to the imported entry numbers in order to re-import an existing entry with a new DDI number. The second option is to import only certain fields from the DDI. Press the Select Fields button to specify what it should be imported. With the last checkbox, you activate to import only entries which do not exist. If a DDI already exists, MobiCall will not import again. Press the Import button below to start the import. In the log field above you can check if the import was successful or not. The next possible data to import are the person and group data. Here we are three possibilities to import the data. The first option is to import the group data. The group numbers and the group names are imported, but all without person assignment. Import and export here if you only need group data. The second possibility is the export and import of personal data. In this case, only the persons with the alarming assignment are imported or exported, but even here without the group assignment. The persons can be exported with the new account format. To do so, activate the checkbox Import and Export Persons with New Account Format instead of the simple Alarm Person format. This must be active for the new web interface. For more information about the account data, please watch the video about the personnel editor or contact NewVoice support. The third and last option is the most frequently used one, because here the personal data, group data and the person assignment to the groups are exported and imported. Select a location for the file and press the Export button. The only setting here is to specify a group range for export. Activate this checkbox if only a specific group range should be exported. Export the group and personnel data by pressing the Export button below. When you are finished, press the Edit button to view the file. The first row is called Personal, Group and Group Assignment Data. In the second row the group names are defined. Keep the semicolons as they are already defined. New groups can be added by adding a new name at the end of this row. A new group number must also be specified for a new group. This is defined in the row below. The group number can be added here. It must be ensured that the group number under the field for the group name is correct. NewVoice recommends using Excel or another CSV editor to keep the structure. The structure of the personnel data is defined below the group number. Keep this format for adding new persons. Add a new person by writing a name under the existing user Herr Hans Muster INT. Required here are the name of the person, number 1 and type 1. If the personal data is exported as account persons, the department, suffix and language are also required. To assign the person to a group, simply add the number, giving that person the position below the group into which it should be imported. If there is no person entry in a group, this is the first entry, starting with number 1 below the group, as shown in the video. The next person for this group will be number 2. Next person number 3 and so on. When this is done, save the file and try to import it by pressing the Import button next to it. For account person entry, MobiCall tries to import as account person or not, depending on the checkbox. With the checkbox, if a person with the same name or a group with the same number exists, override it with the new import data can be defined. Already existing groups or persons should be overwritten with the new values. After the import, MobiCall wants to generate the person and group database. Press the OK button to write the currently imported data into the database. Then open the NewVoice Personal Editor or the NewVoice Alarm Central to check if the data was imported successfully. If not, an error message should already have appeared during the import. If it is a new system, without any personnel and group data, it's recommended to provide the customer with a person and group CSV file with some example persons and 1 or 2 example groups, where the customer can enter the information of all his employees in order to access MobiCall. Make sure to give the customer an example of every possible type of alarm, to avoid any confusion. It is also possible to import groups automatically and dynamically from a third-party system. The CSV file must be available in a defined format. With the NewVoice CSV converter, customer data can be converted and processed for import. After the conversion, the dynamic groups are created. The currently filled dynamic group can be seen in the Alarm Center. Open the NewVoice line monitor on the desktop and press the System button in the upper left corner, followed by Auto Start. Press the Add button on the right side and add the program, nvcsvconverter.x. Press the OK button to save the changes. Now open up the Windows browser and go into the directory d/nvt and search for the program nvcsvconverterman.x and open it by double-clicking. This monitor shows when there is an automatic import, whether everything is going well or whether something is not as expected. Right now, the path for the CSV files has to be defined. Press the Settings button in the lower left corner. In the now opened Settings window, you can define where the file should be received. By default, it is set to d:/nvt/cfiles/ as shown. Change this if necessary. The second option is to define the format of the file. Perhaps the third-party system does not extract as CSV. In this case, it must be adapted here as well. The number of items to be extracted from a line defines how many fields are read in each line. This must not change in the future. A range of dynamic groups must also be specified. The second part of the settings window defines which groups are used. There is also an output file from the import, where you can see how the file was converted. Give a dynamic group number range below. Make sure the third-party system will only export in that range. The next step is to open the NewVoice Personal Editor from the desktop and create the just defined dynamic groups. The groups must be empty and are only used for alarm assignment. If data can be extracted directly from the fields, the position of the field in the read file can be moved to another location in the output file. This can be done in the ini file for CSV conversion. To do this, open the file, nvcsvconverter.ini from the location d:\nvt\ini file. And locate the extract items section. Which is configured, for example, as follows: 3 = 1. Which means that field 1 from the source file is written to field 3 from the output file. Field 3 is the person number. Dynamic and default values are given in the default values section shown here. This is, for example, the telephone type and field number 6, which can always be set to INT for internal callers. For the identifiers group number and group name, the values for the group number and group name are taken over with the values of the group conversion and group name fields. For further information, please refer to the documentation NV Spec 5030 for CSV Import, Dynamic Groups, or contact NewVoice Support. The format and position of the CSV file always remain the same and are separated by semicolons. Simply write an example CSV as follows. First field is the group number. Second field is the group name, third field is the personnel number, and fourth field is the person name. The next fields are always phone number and phone type. A person can have up to 6 different types of alarming. When the file is created, save it and keep it in the folder you defined in the CSV Converter monitor. If the file is removed from the folder and the group of persons is created, the dynamic import works correctly. Contact NewVoice Support for further support. Check the CSV Converter mode to see the results of the import.